This 2024 NBA Finals Series Long Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times your entry with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBA SGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. Sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Tuesday, June the 4th, here to get into our NBA Final Series long player props for the matchup between the Mavericks and the Celtics. We'll discuss, points leader, rebounds leader, threes leader, all that fun stuff. We'll retouch on the MVP market for the finals again. And then we'll do our honorable mentions as we usually do. And we'll also get Chris's predictions for the NBA finals. And we'll also have a separate episode for strictly game one player props. We'll do that on Wednesday. So look out for it then. And of course, we'll go game by game for our player props as well. But joining me here to help me break everything down for this NBA finals, I got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Munaf. What do we have? What, one more sleep? One more sleep, right?
Two more. Tonight, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday morning, we will be ready for game one of the NBA finals.
So excited, Munaf. I can't count clearly, but excited to be here. Excited to be here and talk through the, some NBA props, some series long props. I think sometimes we can get better value on these than we can, game to game, props and spreads and totals as well. So it's an exciting market to kind of jump into. Something that I think I've only done for maybe 2 years now, but like I said, it can definitely we can reap some benefit from it. So I'm excited to jump into it with you today.
Yeah, 100%. This is like the first time I'm doing it as well. For series long player props. Not really a market that I've tapped into. I know we've done 3 years on the NFL Propcast for season long player props. But this is different because it's just a 7-game series, possibly if it gets to 7 games here for the NBA finals. But typically, we don't like to compliment the sports books, Chris, at all. But I think we got to give them credit here for having these type of props available. And, I was talking to some other people offline. I think Scott had mentioned this as well on the NBA pod yesterday, that even BetMGM has started to put up some exciting player props for the series long as well. So I think, we got to give credit where credit is due, whether it is one time of year to the sports book. But yeah, definitely excited to go through this markets for the NBA finals. So like I mentioned, we'll talk about, points per game, rebounds, assists, threes leader, assist leader, points leader, all that fun stuff for this series. So Chris, let's get into it here, man. Let's get into it. Why don't you lead us off with your first series long player prop, man? What do you got?
So I was looking through it, and we'll go. I think so. So one of the ones I want to talk about is a head-to-head matchup, and this was only available over on DraftKings. It's a little bit juiced, but it's actually probably my favorite one. It's Derek White in a head-to-head matchup with Kyrie Irving. So it's most threes made. I don't know if it's something that you saw as well.
Yeah,
really, really stuck out to me, man. And it's
Yeah.
a juice. Like you gotta lay the minus 140 if you're into drink it. Well, it's only juice if you end up losing the bet. But
Yeah.
I just think that this to me felt like it should have been more minus 170-ish, So just so people understand, it's Derek White to make more threes over the course of the series than Kyrie Irving. Kyrie is making a little over 2.5 threes per makes in the playoffs so far. He's tempting just a little over 6. And then you got Derek White on the other side. He's making closer to 3.5 threes, and he's attempting 8.4. So that was the biggest thing that stuck out to me was just I can get a guy to make more threes that's attempting 2 more and already making 1 more. I know Kyrie's shooting 42% from the 3-point line, but Derek White's right behind him at 40%. And if I can just get like that, math feels good to me. And I'll lay the minus 140 there. So Derek White over, I guess Derek White more than Kyrie Irving threes for the series here, And I just getting to, the logistics of it. The Celtics have been pretty good in the above the break three. Like it's not a shot. They are giving it up when it comes to playoffs, but teams are not making a great percentage of those shots. Whereas you look at Dallas defense, they're giving up that shot, and we've seen really big performances from the 3-point line. Even if we go all the way back to the first round series when they played against the Clippers, remember Paul George had a very big game against this same Dallas Mavericks defense, and same thing goes from round to round. We saw Karl Anthony Towns do it in the last round. So I think that outside of the actual numbers, Boston does have a really good Derek White has a really good shot of making more because Dallas's defense is a little more vulnerable than Boston. Yep. So I'll start there. Derek White to make more threes than Kyrie Irving minus 140 over on DraftKings.
Yeah, this was on my list here as well, and probably the one that stuck out to me, like you mentioned here, Chris, because number one, you put out the numbers there, right? That Derek White, despite not shooting great against the Mavericks throughout his career or during the regular season, the role that he has in the Celtics offense, I think is what's kind of separates it here for me, because we know that attention is going to go to Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and that Derek White's going to get those opportunities to get those shots up. And he knocks them down more consistently than not, right? I know the numbers, at least for the regular season, didn't back it up, but I think when we talk about the playoffs, a lot of times we like to throw out those type of numbers because, number one, you're going to see more minutes being played for guys like Derek White, the Drew Holidays of the world, the role players that are out there, the starters, I should say, for both teams. And you laid out the numbers, right? And I think that's number one, what really stuck out to me. And it's not that Kyrie can't knock him down, but Kyrie has his offensive bag, I should say, for lack of better words, is a whole hell of a lot more better than what Derek White has, because Derek White, he's a guy that can get to the basket, but his primary role in this offense for the Boston Celtics is knocking down those 3-point shots and those opportunities that he does get for this Celtics team. So I'm right there with you, laying this minus 140 over on DraftKings right now, head-to-head against Kyrie Irving, who will make the more 3-pointers. We have Derek White at minus 140. And just to clarify, because these markets do get a little tricky, that there are markets out there that when you look at head-to-head points, rebounds, or assists, or even threes, this is total 3-pointers made for the entire finals, not per game. So total 3-pointers made. So at the end of the day, doesn't matter about percentages. If Derek White makes 14 3-pointers to Kyrie's 10 3-pointers, we win this bet with Derek White. So minus 140, we are both on here. So I'm glad we had agreement on that one, Chris, for player prop number one. All right, before we continue the conversation here for our 2024 NBA Finals player props for the series, let me tell everyone about a contest we're running for the NBA Finals as part of the NBA Gambling Podcast. The finals tip off this week, in fact, on Thursday, like we talked about, and we're giving away $100 gift card and $100 cash to the listener who wins our NBA Finals props contest. All you gotta do, it's free to enter. Head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA Finals. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA Finals to get entered into the contest. Again, absolutely free to enter the contest. All right, Chris. So agreement on that player prop there, Derek White minus 140 over Kyrie Irving plus 115 for total 3-pointers made in the NBA Finals. Take us over to number two, man. What do you got?
All right, so next one we'll go to Derek White's teammate, and we'll go Mr. Jason Tatum. If I'm looking at his rebounds average, so this is also over on DraftKings. You can get Jason Tatum to average 9.9 rebounds. So he has to average 10 rebounds in order for this prop to cash. And I like this one a little bit better, because when I looked at the rebounds leader, Jason Tatum he's the all-out rebounds leader, but you have to lay minus 150 here. I
Yeah.
do think that there will be a player that average double-digit rebounds in this series, and that's what we would need Jason Tatum to do, so that we don't have to drink that juice, and we can take this minus 115, save ourselves 35 cents here.
Yeah.
So to go to average pretty much 10 rebounds for the series. First thing that sticks out to me is the finals will be about defense, right? We know that these are not fast-paced teams. These teams play pretty slow, and both of these teams are excellent on the defensive end. Now, Porzingis coming back, doesn't really scare me off this prop at all, because I think Porzingis coming back, one, he may be acclimated into the offense just a tad bit slow, but also and also on the defensive end. But also, I think that what Coach Kidd is going to do is he's going to pull Porzingis away from the rim, as he has with some of the other bigs that they've seen so far in the playoffs, which will leave a lot of weak side rebounds for a guy like Jason Tatum. We know that he's probably he's the the rebounds leader in this series for a good reason to be at minus 150. So you go through and just look at Tatum's game logs. He only has what 3 games so far in the playoffs where he has not 3 out of 14 games where he hasn't gotten double digit rebounds. So that's one thing. And his averages for the playoffs overall, like I said, only 3 games out of the 14. So he's 11 to 3 to getting more than 10 rebounds, and he's averaging 10.4 here. So I think it'll be a defensive type game. Like I said, Porzingis doesn't scare me off at all, and I think Tatum's going to do what's necessary. Also, as we get farther along, game 4, game 5, potentially game 6 if it goes that far, I do think that this will be the defense will ramp up even more. We'll see even more misses, and we'll see unders start to come in. So I like Tatum to average 10 rebounds in this series. I'll lay the 15-cent juice here and take Tatum to average over 9.9 rebounds available on DraftKings.
Yeah, in fact, if you even go back to the regular season throughout his career against the Mavericks here, Chris, we got to go all the way back to 2021 up until this season. But over the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 head-to-head meetings against the Mavericks, he's been in double-digit rebounds in 5 out of those 6 games, at least 11 rebounds in all 5 of those games against the Dallas Mavericks. And again, you laid it out for the playoffs, where over the last 5 games, he's averaging 10.2 rebounds per game. During the playoffs, he's averaging 40.5 minutes, averaging 10.4 rebounds per game. So you mentioned Porzingis. I'm right there with you. It doesn't make me change my mind about this, because Porzingis is not really a rebounder. Yeah, he'll get you maybe 4 to 5, but we also don't know what the minutes allocation is going to be for a guy like Porzingis coming off of the injury, right? We got the report this morning that, he's going to be active for game 1. He's ready for game 1. And it just seems like all systems go for Porzingis. So I don't think they're going to put him out there for 30 plus minutes, in the first game. You'll get him out there, get his feet wet, because you do have 2 days off in between games 1 and 2, even though they're in the same city. Thursday is going to be game 1 and Sunday is going to be game 2. So, I'm with you. I really do like this for Jason Tatum. And I think the one of the things underrated about his game is the rebounding aspect and also his defense. So I think that he's going to have to flourish on both sides of the basketball here for the Boston Celtics if they want to win this title this season. All right, I'll stay on the Boston Celtics side. I'll go to assists per game market, and Jrue Holiday is at 4.6 right now. I'm taking the over 4.6 on Jrue Holiday's assists per game. And Jrue Holiday, very familiar with this Mavericks team. We take a look at what he's done in his career against them. He's averaging 6.4 assists in 34 career meetings against the Mavericks, but that dates all the way back to 2009. And again, if we want to go to more recent numbers against the Dallas Mavericks, we'll start with his time with the Milwaukee Bucks. So you take a look over the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 head-to-head meetings against the Mavericks. He's had at least 6 or more assists against this Mavericks team. Just this season alone, in the 2 head-to-head meetings, he had 6 assists and he had 7 assists respectively. And again, Jrue Holiday is that guy that's going to be the catalyst for this Boston Celtics team, both on offense and defense. Over the last 5 games, he's averaging 5.4 assists per contest for the Boston Celtics. During the playoffs here, he's averaging right at the number of 4.6. So what I feel like the books just did is that they just saw, hey, he's averaging 4.6 for the playoffs. That's going to be our number. But I think the one area that I think Drew Holiday is going to really excel on is initiating this offense, because I know his efforts on the defensive side, whether he's matched up with Luka or whether he's matched up with Kyrie, he's going to have to focus on that side. So maybe the scoring may not be there for Drew Holiday, but I do expect him, again, a very, very high IQ basketball player. He's one of my favorite two-way players in the entire NBA. And I also know the minutes are going to be there for a guy like Drew Holiday. He's averaging 40.5 minutes per game over the last 5 playoff games. In the playoffs alone, he's averaging close to 38 minutes. I know he's been a little bit inconsistent about getting the assist, but I think asking him to average 4.6, where there could be a game, whether it's in game 1, Chris, or whether it's in game 2, where we may think it's going to be a higher scoring game after those defensive adjustments do come in. But there's a possibility that he has a game where he has double-digit assists, and that's going to really help out your overall average for the NBA Finals. And he did that in, I believe it was game 2 against the Indiana Pacers, where he had 10 assists. Game 1, he had 2 assists. Sorry, game 1, he had 8 assists. Game 2, he had 10 assists. And then games 3 and 4, only a combined 5 assists. But again, when you have those 2 type of games, that's only going to help your averages. So again, you can either take it game by game, but I think overall Drew Holiday can get this assist for me. I'm going to take Drew Holiday assists per game in the NBA Finals over 4.6, and that number right now is sitting at on DraftKings at -115 here, Chris.
Yeah, you laid it out perfect. The only thing I'll add is the motivational factor. We remember what happened to Drew Holiday last year. In the playoffs, they didn't have Giannis in the first round, and Jimmy Butler. He went out with Jimmy Butler. Scoring a game-winning basket against him. So I think there's a lot of motivation, especially after being traded, away from that team. And he's looked like a man on a mission. We've seen him play through injury. We've seen him play through sickness and illness. If you had a chance to watch that game 4 against the Indiana Pacers, they interviewed him after the first quarter, and he said something that really stuck out. If they asked, say, Drew Holiday, how were you able to muster up the energy to play in a game like this when you've been feeling so bad over the last couple of days? And he said, it's the playoffs. And he just walked to a seat. And I think for Drew Holiday, he's at a point now where it's really just about winning championships, and he's going to do what's needed. And what's needed for this team, if it's like you said, for him to be the facilitator out there, be the quarterback of this team, settle them down when things aren't going well, and get into their offense. And I think he'll have plenty of opportunity. Of course, like you said, Ime Udoka trusts him as well. So he'll definitely have plenty of chances to facilitate against this Dallas Mavericks defense here.
Yep, 100% agree with that entirely. All right, Chris, before we get over to player prop number 3 on our list, let me tell everyone about our sponsor at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. That's Underdog Fantasy. The NBA playoffs are here, and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make it a lot more interesting. Underdog is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your other favorite sports, and you can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. New customers get a pick'em special in the lobby when they do sign up, and Underdog will be running a ton of different promos, bonus cash airdrops, specials, giveaways, and more throughout the NBA playoffs. So make sure to follow at Underdog Picks on Twitter to keep an eye out. Underdog is available in 30-plus states, like I mentioned, including California, Texas, and Canada. They also just launched Champions, their player versus player format in Florida. Sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. Again, that's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure that promo code NBA SGPN. All right, Chris, take us over to player prop number 3, my man. What do you got?
So we're going to the opposite side now, and we're still on DraftKings. Looking at Mr. Doncic here, to lead the series in total threes made. Now, I know I already talked about, liking Derek White over Kyrie, but Luka to lead, and I can get it at even money with how well he's been shooting the basketball. And we've seen Boston's defense be a little shaky against the three-point line in some of their losses, specifically against the Indiana Pacers. Not in their losses, but in some of those games where the Indiana Pacers had a chance to win. We also saw Cleveland get hot from the 3-point line, in a couple games, and we see Miami get hot from the 3-point line as well. If you go back and just look at him, he's averaging just in the playoffs in itself, he's averaging the attempts is what take it for me. He's averaging almost 9.8 attempts, 3.5 makes per game. Shooting about 34%. But recently, he's really caught fire against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He hit at least 4 threes in every one of those games outside of the first one.
It was wild.
How do you bet against that right now? And it's a part of their offense is to come down, have him. If you go under on that pick and roll for whatever reason, Al Horford's out there, and we know that they're going to try to take advantage of Al Horford. I don't know if me and you spoke about this, but I really, especially if Porzingis becomes compromised and he's not able to go, for the full series. If Al Horford is out there or Luke Cornett is out there,
Barbecue
we're talking
chicken.
about barbecue chicken, especially when you go under on that screen. Luka can make the shot in your face anyway. So I don't have to get into all the numbers here, but Luka is going to shoot, a bunch of them. He shot at least 10 threes in the last 5 games, in 5 of the last 6 as well. So I think the temps are going to be there. And I like Luka at even money to lead the series in threes. I'll take that every series going into him. Very confident on Luka leading the series in threes here.
4.6 makes per game over his last 5 games, against getting back to the Western Conference Finals, I should say, shooting it at 43.4% over the last 5 games, and for the playoffs overall, he's shooting it at 34.3%. But it's sheer volume, right, for Luka, and he's going to get him up, like you mentioned, over the last 5 games against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He was averaging 10.6 attempts per game. He had 7.7 against OKC, but it seems like he found, and as the playoffs progressed from round 1 to the conference semifinals to the conference finals, Luka got better and better, knocking down that 3-point shot, because again, in round 1, he only shot at 23.9%. Round 2 against the Oklahoma City Thunder, 39.1%. And despite him taking more volume in the conference finals against the Minnesota Timberwolves, he shot it at 43.4%. So that's something that the Dallas Mavericks are definitely going to need in these NBA finals. Because I think that when we look at this Mavericks team, who do you consistently trust to knock down a 3-point shot, right? I know we saw flashes of PJ Washington in that series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But again, the amount of attempts that Luka gets up, I couldn't talk you off of it here. Again, like you mentioned, the matchups out there that if Porzingis maybe gets hurt again, God forbid, or foul trouble, or the case might be, and they have to put Al Horford out there, it's not going to be a very good. It's not going to be very good for him. I think we'll say that for Al Horford and the defense, at least for the Boston Celtics. So, yeah, couldn't talk you off of Luka here for his 3-pointers. For him to, you said, to lead the NBA Finals, right, Chris?
Series leader. Yep. Total threes made. Series leader.
Even money. All right. All right, for my last one, I'm gonna stay on the Boston Celtics side here, and I thought this number was a little bit low. For a guy like Jaylen Brown, for 3-pointers made per game, that number's at 1.7. It is a little bit juiced at minus 130, but Jaylen Brown again is a guy that we saw it in the Indiana Pacers series, and you and I talked about this when we did the Propcast for our game player props. That for the first 2 games, he was the only player on this team that was really attacking the basket for the Boston Celtics. And then it finally clicked to Jason Tatum that said, hey, let me start getting to the basket, attacking a little bit more, get some easy shots, get to the free throw line as well. But you also take a look at Jaylen Brown from beyond the arc, right? In the playoffs alone, he's shooting it around 36.8%. Last 5 games stayed consistent, 36.7%. The attempts are right around 6 per game, but he's also knocking down 2.2 per game. He did in the conference finals, I should say. Against the Cleveland Cavaliers, he averaged 4.2 attempts per game. He made 1.8 on average. And then against the Miami Heat, got him 5.6 attempts per game, and he made 1.8. So this kind of goes back to what I was talking about for Jrue Holiday's assist, But if he has games where he knocks down and he gets hot from beyond the arc, where he has a game where he knocks down 4 to 5 3-pointers, that's only going to help my overall average, right? And that's exactly what he did against the Indiana Pacers. In the 4 games, he had 2 games where he knocked down 4, and there was 2 games where he knocked down 1, and he averaged 2.5 makes per game in that span for the Boston Celtics. So with the additions of Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, him attacking the basket may not be there, but I do expect them to play the Boston Celtics brand of basketball, which has been living and dying by the 3-point shot. And I do expect, we talked about Derek White, we talked about Jason Tatum, and again, Jaylen Brown isn't shy about launching them as well for this team. So 1.7, I thought it was a little bit conservative. It is a little bit juiced at minus 130, but I'll take over on Jaylen Brown. I think that, again, he's going to rise to the occasion here, being the NBA Finals. But that was the one that really stuck out to me here. So Jaylen Brown, over 1.7 3-pointers made per game, minus 130 currently over on DraftKings here, Chris.
Yeah, I like the variety here. Jaylen Brown can catch and shoot, but he can also just pull up in your face. We saw that, a lot in that last series against the Indiana Pacers. Some big shots made, like with contested shots made, with big Miles Turner running at him. So I like that, outside of everything that you mentioned, I think the opportunities are going to be there for sure. You already talked about, and I think that coincides with Jaylen Brown's assist prop as well. With Drew Holiday's assist prop, excuse me. Just for him to be able to find his guys, trust his guys, and Jaylen Brown is definitely one of those guys. So getting, Jaylen Brown to only, I think he could average more closer to 3. So I think this is a really good look by you, man.
All right, Chris, before we get over to some honorable mentions here for the NBA Finals Series props, let me tell everyone about the newest sponsor on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. That is going to be Rhythm. Hey, if you're betting on NBA player props, of course you are because you're listening to this podcast and the Propcast here, then you need to download Rhythm. Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA game, making it easy to go through the best props to put your money on in seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning our algorithm to give you the best shot at winning. Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs to help you feel even more confident in your picks, which you can make wherever you normally place your bets or DFS picks as well. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data without you needing to endlessly scroll through a sportsbook. Rhythm also allows you to create your own custom NBA models so you can get AI-backed money line, spread, and total picks for every playoff game. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. Again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. Again, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. All right, Chris, let's get into some honorable mentions here, man. Anything that stuck out to you as far as honorable mentions for the series prices or series player props?
If I'm being honest, not a lot. Not a lot, honestly. I feel like these lines are probably going to be pretty sharp. Of course, we have the adjustments that we don't know that's going to be needed to be made by each coach as well, and that's a part of it. I feel like this series is pretty cut and dry. I think a couple independent variables that we don't know about is the status, like how effective will Porzingis be? Does he come back and immediately re-aggravates that injury? Is he able to play, every single game? Things like that influence the totals, the spreads, the player props a lot. Yeah. So, of course, you would like Al Horford a little bit more as far as his offensive production, if you knew, what was going to happen with Porzingis. But I feel like everything is pretty cut and dry. The one thing I will mention here, is I saw points per game, and Mr. Kyrie Irving is averaging 22.8 in the playoffs so far. He really stepped it up a lot in that next round, which was the Western Conference Finals. And you heard him talking about it post game. He said, I feel like because our guys have not been here, it's on me to elevate my game, and then they can come along with me.
Yeah.
Points prop is up 1 whole point here, from 22.8 in the playoffs to 23.8 for the finals. I kind of feel like Kyrie's going to be needed, man. This dude is really, really gifted. We know he can score the ball at every single level. We know that he's going to be extremely motivated. I listened to the the post practice interviews and all of his media availability leading up to the finals so far. And having another championship, I think, is a big part of what he wants his legacy to be when it's all said and done. So I kind of feel like Kyrie can have a really good offensive game. My question for you, if I was thinking about Kyrie going averaging more than 23.8 points per game in the finals, my question for you would be, do Luka and Kyrie continue to play the brand of basketball that they have been playing, where they have the ball in their hand, they know that they can beat their man one-on-one, and they continue to trust their teammates? Is it a PJ Washington series? Is it a Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, rim running type series? Or do we see them be more aggressive offensively, looking to get their own shot? What do you think about that?
So this kind of ties into what one of my honorable mention was, and you mentioned one of the guys there, which is PJ Washington. And his number is at 11.8 points per game. And you take a look at what he's done in the playoffs thus far, and I just had it in front of me. Let me go back to that screen here for PJ Washington. So in the playoffs alone, he's averaging, let's see here, 12.9 points per game. And he's shooting at 43.6% from the floor. And we know majority of those points are coming from beyond the arc for PJ Washington. So I did a little bit more digging. And I know that some of these things are the lineups and game flow and injuries are all part of it. But PJ Washington, when he was with the Charlotte Hornets before he got traded to the Dallas Mavericks, obviously this past trade deadline, in 8 straight games, he scored at least 14 points head to head against the Boston Celtics. And a lot of that may have to do with that he's getting the open 3-point shot. And that's something that we saw throughout the playoffs, right? That because Luka and Kyrie had the ball in their hands a lot, that those open up the opportunities for guys like PJ Washington. I was leaning towards taking the over 11.8 points per game for PJ Washington, thinking that what you mentioned, that do they trust their teammates a little bit more? I think the one guy that you probably can trust is going to be PJ Washington to consistently score for you. Because when you talked about those lob threats to Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, that may work for maybe 1 or 2 games before the Boston Celtics make an adjustment on that and don't let them allow that to happen. But there also could come to a point, Chris, of what you're mentioning, that yes, Luka and Kyrie probably want to trust their teammates a little bit, but if it gets to a point where they can't, then you have Luka and Kyrie kind of take over, kind of as we saw in those final, especially in game 5 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, where it was a Luka and the Kyrie Irving show. I know a lot of narrative is about Kyrie Irving going back against Boston and his former team, whatever the case might be. But I think regardless if it was Boston in the NBA Finals or if it wasn't Boston in the NBA Finals, Kyrie Irving is still going to be motivated to go out there and play his best basketball because it's the NBA Finals. It's your opportunity to win a championship. Maybe a little bit of extra motivation because it is going up against Boston, but I don't think that changes the fact for Kyrie Irving. So I wish they had updated numbers on this, Chris, as the series progressed along for this. Then we could really capitalize on it. But I think that, again, the shot volume is still going to be there for a guy like Kyrie Irving. And the minutes are going to be there for him as well. So I think this number it feels a tad bit high just because you feel like it's going to be Luka that's going to be doing all the damage. But we also don't know what the game plan is going to be for the Boston Celtics. Like, hey, let's go out and double Luka and have somebody else beat us, or let's let Luka do his thing and we play hard defense on everybody else. And if one man beats us. So I think it might be just a little bit shade too high for me to get behind Kyrie, because for the playoffs, he's averaging 22.8 points per game. The thing about it, lastly, I'll mention this. he's been a little bit inconsistent as well, scoring the basketball as well, because you take a look that he, again, going back to the OKC series against the Minnesota series as well, there's a couple games where he had a 20-point game, a 16-point game, but there was games where he had 36, 33. So for me, it would probably be, I would probably take the under on it for Kyrie, but would I be surprised if we average 25 points per game? Absolutely not.
Yeah, excellent, Cap. If it's everything that I thought about in my head too, you kind of got to weigh the pendulum, right? The over or the under, or
Yeah.
if I just don't feel comfortable enough betting it at all. And I would agree with you. I don't feel comfortable enough. If I knew what the adjustments were going to be, and if guys were going to be able to make shots, then I think I would be a bit more I guess assertive in my efforts and probably would have made the bet. But that was the biggest one that stood out to me. Is it because I think they're correlated. I don't think Kyrie goes over and PJ Washington goes over. If Kyrie's doing more, more scoring, PJ probably goes under. But if Kyrie's continuing to trust his teammates and those guys are knocking down shots, as we've seen so far throughout the playoffs, it could absolutely be a PJ Washington over and Kyrie, maybe to average a few more assists, and maybe a look towards the assists over his prop. So over his points prop. So I agree with you there.
All right, Chris, let's get over to the NBA Finals MVP market. I know you and I already discussed this on the last Propcast that we did to do a little bit of a look ahead. So we don't have to, take too much time on this. But, when we talked about it, we had said if you like Dallas, you want to bet on Luka to win MVP. And I did that at plus 275. Now the updated number for Luka to win the Finals MVP is at plus 205. Obviously, that's still a better number for the series price if you do like Dallas to win the series. So I think that instead of taking the series price, you probably just take a Luka at being MVP at plus 205. I honestly think, Chris, that it's going to be one of the top 3 guys, top 4 guys. I mean, Kyrie at 22-1. I think that he's going to garner a lot of interest because of the narrative. But because Luka, let's just say he has a bad shooting percentage, he's still a guy that's going to fill it up in the stat sheet with rebounds and assists. Tatum being at minus 115, I understand that. But I think outside of those 2 superstars for each team that I mentioned, nothing really intrigued me there. I mean, do you have a different opinion on that, or do you just think it's going to be one of the superstar players? Because I think the last time, quote unquote, a role player that won it, I think in my memory, I think would be Andre Iguodala for the Golden State Warriors. Other than that, it's been a superstar player, the best player on the team that's won.
Yeah. You took we talked about it already, and you just regurgitated everything that that we kind of talked about collectively, and I would agree with that. Like you said, it's going to be definitely one of those big guys. If Dallas wins it, I think it'll be really, really difficult, like extremely difficult, not to give it to Luka. So I know we talked about it at plus 275. Shout out to you for putting that in him, because you've lost 70 cents already with them just winning one game. And on the opposite side, it kind of feels like with Tatum not winning the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, he's probably more primed. And I also kind of feel like he really stepped up a lot in the Eastern Conference Finals because, people had been down on him because, his 3-point shot wasn't falling. And, he takes a lot of slack for being, on such a good team. So I could see him, really wanting to prove something to himself here. I think back to the interview that came out, I think when the season started last season, after they had lost to the Golden State Warriors the year before, he sat down with Malika Andrews and talked about, just being in the dark space for, a pretty long time after they lost to the Golden State Warriors. So now you finally get a chance to get back to the finals. I think that they, would get maximum effort from Tatum here in this spot, even if they, put Derrick Jones Jr. against him, who has been playing really good defensive basketball. I think Tatum will have the ball in his hands to be able to play make. We already talked about him rebounding, and I think he should be able to score the basketball here as well. Probably, hunt Kyrie, hunt Luka, make those guys work on defense as much as possible. And then it really just comes down to him being able to shoot the ball, and make the shots, because we know how good of a scorer he is to be so young. That being Jason Tatum.
And also depending on where you have Jason Tatum in your best player rankings in the NBA. I know some people have him top 5. Some people don't even have him in their top 10, honestly. But I think this is the opportunity for Jason Tatum to really cement himself as being one of the best players if you don't have him already, with this opportunity in front of you in the NBA Finals, going out and taking advantage of the opportunity. And because we know that in any sport, how difficult it is to get to this point of the season, but also how difficult it is to win the championship as well. And again, this is the opportunity for Jason Tatum. So, yeah, right now he is the odds-on favorite at -115 to win Finals MVP. All right, Chris, before we do get to best bets to wrap up this show, I'm going to give you the floor here. Get your NBA Finals prediction. Who do you think is going to win and how many games is going to be? If you want to throw in what your X factors are going to be in the series, what might be the difference about which team is going to win the NBA Finals here? Who do you got to win it this year?
Man, it's difficult, because I don't want to be the guy that says, Boston is going to win the championship. Like, it feels like they've been the best team in the NBA, and this run that the Dallas Mavericks has been absolutely nuclear. When we think about the what's it take to get to this spot? We saw
Mhm.
Dallas turn it on after the All-Star break, whereas Boston has been, really just coasting throughout. And that's a big part of it for me. Boston has had a very easy schedule to get here. Round one, no Jimmy Butler. Round two, no Jared Allen. Donovan Mitchell goes out. Round three, Tyrese Halliburton goes out. And this team they're pretty healthy, especially if we get Porzingis in here for a full series. Coming off a sweep, really difficult for me to bet against Boston. However, I will say this: Dallas continues to shock the world.
Yeah.
Round one, it was them versus the Clippers, and people were kind of on the fence, saying that either one of those teams could win. Ultimately, Kawhi Leonard got ruled out, and we all expected the Dallas Mavericks to win. But we saw them do something special against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now you could argue, maybe, you know, the Thunder, exceeded expectations, which I think we all pretty much would agree to. But that Thunder team was very good defensively, very good offensively. And the way that Dallas was able to go in and win those games, specifically the ones in Oklahoma, were pretty interesting in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then how Coach Kidd, I think they have the coaching advantage as well. What we saw him do to Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns to kind of neutralize those guys in round three, which what we just saw, I think that's something to talk about as well. Ultimately, what it comes down to for myself, is I don't like taking the team that's had to take the more difficult route. With Boston coming off a sweep here, finally getting back to the promised land after missing it 1 year, having a team that they know what it takes now. Outside of the experience that Coach Kidd has as a player, and Kyrie Irving have of playing with LeBron James and making big shots in the playoffs. Luka Doncic is absolutely amazing. I think the experience and the rest goes to the Boston Celtics. So ultimately, I'm rooting for Dallas. I want
Yeah.
Dallas to win, but I think that Boston finds a way to get it done. I think Dallas covers a lot of the spreads, and I do think the series will go for. If you're thinking Boston in 5, I don't think so. Like I think it will be a prolonged series. Maybe
Yeah.
I haven't bet anything in this market yet, but I'm thinking Dallas at least pushes it to 6, maybe even 7 here is the
Yeah.
way that I'm looking at it. That's what I think. But ultimately, I do think Boston ends up with more wins, but Dallas ends up with more covers, in my opinion.
Yeah, over 5.5 games. I think I started around -160. I don't think either team wraps this up in 5 games or less. You talked about the road that I don't think it's been talked about, like what Dallas has had to do in the Western Conference. And I'm not saying it by any means that they had an easy path, but when you take a look at this Boston Celtics team and the depth that they have with Derek White and Drew Holiday, obviously you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. In conference semifinals, it was SGA, and then you're hoping somebody else stepped up. There wasn't that solid number 2 guy for OKC. You talk about Jalen Williams, who didn't have a great series. Chet was there. And we talk about the same thing for the Western Conference Finals. It was Anthony Edwards, and then you were hoping that you would get some type of consistent scoring from somebody else. And I mentioned this when we did the Western Conference Finals preview, and I said that whichever player has a better series between Karl Anthony Towns and Kyrie Irving, that team is going to advance to the NBA Finals. And that by far margin was Kyrie Irving. 4 of the 5 games, Kyrie Irving was better, and that propelled that team to get to the NBA Finals. But now this Boston Celtics team has Jason Tatum. They have Jaylen Brown. And, when they made those 2 acquisitions, at the beginning of the season were Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. I said, this is going to be a very, very difficult team to beat with the depth that they now have added. We'll see what we get out of Porzingis. If you're a Boston Celtics fan, you're hoping that you get, I don't know, 25, 27 minutes from him. He's able to knock down some shots for you. Excuse me. But I also think that for this Boston Celtics team, you have 4 different guys that you can throw at Luka Doncic and, disrupt his rhythm. By no means can anybody slow this guy down, especially when he's feeling it like he was in the conference finals. But I think just to kind of get him off his tracks and disrupt his rhythm, I think that the Boston Celtics have 4 guys in Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Drew Holiday that they can throw at him. So I think at the end of the day, I think the difference is that Boston just has that more depth right now. And it's a very, very scary proposition to bet against Luka when he's playing this way, and especially Kyrie Irving as well. But I think ultimately the depth is just going to be the difference for this team. And outside of, we talked about PJ Washington, but outside of that, I know Derek Jones Jr. has been fantastic as well. But when it comes down to actually putting the ball in the bucket, I think that I just feel like Boston has more scoring options. If let's say Jason Tatum has a bad shooting night, Jaylen Brown is there. If Jaylen Brown has a bad shooting night, you still have guys like Derek White, Drew Holiday that can knock down shots for you, and you still have Jason Tatum as well. Let's just say Luka or Kyrie have a bad shooting night, you would probably need somebody else like a PJ Washington, somebody to step up in those spots. So I think Boston in 6 or 7 is going to be what am on. I do like Boston in the series. I think they do get it done. And again, I don't think this will be the last time we see the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals, because this team right now, with how they've been able to find ways for Luka and Kyrie to coexist, I think they're just going to add a little bit more depth as well on this Dallas Mavericks team going forward. But would I be shocked, like you mentioned, if Dallas won? Absolutely not, because I can't trust Boston. But again, I think ultimately Boston does, like you mentioned, get more wins in this series, and I think we'll see their best brand of basketball in this series against the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I think sounds like we're pretty aligned. I love your analysis. Love that.
All right, Chris, let's wrap it up here with best bets here for the our player props, at least for the series. You want to lead us off? Best bet? What do you got?
Yes, sir. Let's go right back to where we finished off last. Luka to lead the series in total threes made. Even money. Like, you kidding me? I'll sign me up. One thing I know for sure is I don't, outside of injury, Luka's gonna be Luka. We've seen him be extremely consistent. I think he's had maybe 2, poor games. I know Boston has really great defenders, but I do think Luka's the best player in the series. I love Jason Tatum. I think Luka's the best player in the series. I think he gets to where he wants to get to on the floor. I love about Luka, is he's not fast. you could beat him to any spot you want to on the floor, but he's gonna get to what he wants to get to. And I don't think that it's a letdown for him. I know it's his first finals, but this dude's been playing basketball, professionally, since he was 4 years old. So not really, but I think it was 12, 13, I think. So yeah, I'll take Luka to lead this league, to lead the series in total threes made at even money over on DraftKings. Best bet.
Yeah, couldn't talk you off again. We talked about the attempts that he's been getting and the spots on the floor that he can get to. And he's been shooting it well. He's been just better round by round leading up to the NBA Finals. I think that just continues for a guy like Luka. I'll go back to the first one we talked about. I know it's a little bit juicy at -140, and both you and I are agreeing about it. Derek White to have more total 3-pointers made in the entire NBA Finals over Kyrie Irving. That number's at -140 for Derek White. And when we know what the role of Derek White is in the offense here, and I think we talked about it, especially in our NBA Finals predictions, that we're expecting the depth to be the difference here. And I think that guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday will step up to that occasion here. So I know the attempts are going to be there. I know we talked a little bit about how he hasn't been shooting it very well in the conference finals there, but I think this is going to be the opportunity that attention to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown is going to be there. And again, that's going to open up opportunities for Derek White. And you can almost say that Derek White is maybe going to be the X factor for this Boston Celtics team, because he's a guy that can get you assists. He's a guy that can knock down those 3-point shots. And if he's on it's going to be very difficult to beat this Boston Celtics team. So head-to-head matchup currently over on DraftKings. You go to finals player props. You go to the head-to-head threes market made. Derek White minus 140 over Kyrie Irving. Total three-pointers made for the NBA Finals as my best bet. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Propcast 2024 NBA Finals Series long player props. We'll be back on Wednesday for Game 1 player props, so look out for us then. Chris, anything else you want to mention before we do go our separate ways?
Absolutely not, man. Just enjoy. And like said, I counted it wrong because I said 2 days. I'm 1 day, but it's we got 2 more rests before we get a chance to witness this NBA Finals. I think it's gonna be a great matchup, man. So enjoy the show. Enjoy the show. enjoy the game. Best of luck on all your action. Of course, we want you guys to bet responsibly, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
I mean, it is going to be a show watching this NBA Finals. I'll tell you that much with the star power that's going to be on the floor. So, yeah, leading up to it, again, we'll have content all throughout the week leading up to the NBA Finals. So look out for us. Then if you haven't already subscribed to the NBA Gambling Podcast YouTube channel and also the Propcast channel, again, guys want to make sure to get over to the Propcast because after the NBA season is over, NBA props shows will be strictly on the Propcast channel. And also, we'll be ramping up NFL markets as well, player props with this awards market, things like that after the NBA Finals are over with myself and Chris. So tap us in with us for the NFL season as well. And again, like I mentioned, we'll be back on Wednesday for Game 1 player props. We'll be here. If you're going to join us live, it'll be at 12 p.m. Eastern time here on the Propcast YouTube channel, also on the NBA Gambling Podcast YouTube channel as well. So join us for Game 1 player props. All right. Good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.